Hello, I am Leah from TYFU, and we are so grateful for the opportunity to speak with Pete Doran, a seasoned marketing executive who has recently been through the challenging experience of redundancy and successfully navigated his way back into the job market. He's here to share his personal story, how he overcame the obstacles he faced, and offer some practical tips for those of you who might be going through a similar situation. Pete, thank you so much for being with us here today, and congratulations on your new role.
Thanks, Leah. Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. It's been an interesting couple of months, but
Yeah,
it has been a pleasing, particularly the last couple of weeks. Now I've secured a new role, so happy to chat through the last couple of
yeah,
months.
well done. Can you tell us a little bit about your career journey and maybe your previous role?
Yeah. So I've always worked in consumer goods. So I've worked across a couple of sort of larger corporations like Mars and Wrigley's. I've worked in sort of mid-tier corporations like Victoria Coffee, and the last 3 years I've been working more in the startup world for V2 Food, which is a plant protein or plant meat substitution. So been in that sort of emerging market the last few years. So yeah, it was a fun ride just to move out of the large corporates into more of a startup feel. But yeah, unfortunately the category hasn't quite developed to where everyone was expecting. And it's probably just a bit of time more than anything else. I think to be a sensitive choice for people to sub out their protein choices. So unfortunately the category didn't quite develop, and then sort of a restructure came off the back of that. So about 3 months ago, my role was made redundant there, and yeah, just been on the search since then.
Yeah. Well, it's a shame that it didn't work out, but yeah, I guess that's what happens with life.
Yeah,
What
it
were your
does
yeah,
absolutely.
what were your immediate thoughts and feelings when you first learned about your redundancy, and how did you handle that initial shock?
Yeah, I think the initial part for me, because it's sort of almost like was the end of a bit of an adventure, I suppose. So it was a bit of a unique opportunity at the time. I had a bit of that feeling of sort of missing out on something that could be sort of large, or something that you were building from scratch. So that was sort of an initial shock of it all. I was probably lucky in the regard that it was a little bit coming, I suppose. Wasn't such a surprise.
Mm,
So the category across internationally in Australia, everywhere, just wasn't growing to where everyone expected. So yeah, there was change coming. So I was sort of prepared for it a little bit. So being aware of it all. Still, when it does sort of play out, it's still just a bit of an initial shock with it all. But I'm a pretty sort of generally pretty positive person, so I sort of it doesn't take me long for me to try to just to take the positive out of it, and just sort of these things generally happen for a reason. So I just keep moving, chatted to people, all of the things that you sort of initially do when you get the news. Particularly my wife, she's went through the redundancy last year, or twice actually.
wow.
So we've
Okay. Oh
yeah,
gosh. There's
yeah,
a
so we've
season.
experienced a
Yeah.
little bit in the family. So
Yeah.
so yeah, she was a good sounding board just to bounce off and then talk through, and then yeah, you just got to keep moving, I think. So that was probably my initial sort of reaction, and then yeah, started to work on a plan from there.
Yeah. Great. That sounds great. And what sort of strategies do? Did you kind of use to cope, I guess, with the emotional impact during that time? So you spoke to your wife, and she was a great sounding board.
Yeah, yeah. I think
Yeah.
actually it was I got a 3-year-old daughter, and at the time she came home from daycare with a saying that was pretty humbling. It was just perfect timing as well. It was like, you don't get upset, you just get up. And I was like, all
Oh,
right.
that's I
So
love that.
I was just like, all right, we gotta keep moving. So
Nailed that. Yeah.
exactly. So just in life, so it was just yeah, you just got to keep moving. I think that was probably the biggest take out of it. Um, like for me, structure is a big important part of it all. So like
Mm,
just in life, so like still sort of doing your normal like exercise routines in the morning. I always find that that's always just a big part of just focus and getting you up in the morning. So that was even once had finished up, just continuing that routine. So I think routine was the biggest part initially, and that's just to work it through. And as I said, yeah, just chatting to people as much as I can, and
yeah.
then I'm the type of person, once I've got a plan in place, I just feel a lot better. So I know people approach it in different ways, and whether they just sort of take time off or whatever, but I'm generally one that just keeps moving in. And once I know that things are heading in the right direction, I feel a lot better. So.
Right. So you didn't really take too much time off before you jumped straight back into the job search. You kind of started looking straight away.
Yeah, my feeling was that the job market's pretty patchy, I suppose, at the moment.
Yeah,
Like, and that was the
sure is.
description from the recruiters, which I
Mm,
hadn't really heard of it as a description before, but generally everyone that was telling me that. So it was sort of that feeling that, I just needed to get everything sort of set up initially, whether that's just the recruiter base, like your resume. So I was a bit lucky that once I got notice of the redundancy until I actually finished up, I had a few weeks still with the business.
yeah.
So I sort of used that opportunity, and obviously not everyone has that sort of privilege to do that as well, but I just used that time to really set myself up. So that was like updating resumes, getting that in a place that I'm happy with, speaking to recruiters, and then just getting that sort of initial base sort of set up. And then, once your resume is set up and happy to shoot it over to recruiters. Like the good recruiters will have feedback on resumes, and you can sort of build it a little bit collaboratively with them.
Yeah.
What I would also say is I think it's always good to catch up with recruiters face to face as much as you can, because I feel the more personal, like, or just relationship you build, which is always better, a lot better face to face. I think it always puts you in good stead. So I think that's always a good thing that I've always not insisted, but encouraged when I'm chatting to them, like rather than just do a Zoom call,
Yeah.
catch up for coffee, and that's what I did in those first couple of weeks. And
Hmm.
then, even though we had some technical difficulties to start here, it's always handy to have yeah, your laptop set up and things like
Right.
that, like your tools of trade a little bit. So I feel like, you don't want to necessarily have to start that day one. I always just felt like, you want to start right into it because the thing with redundancy, which I've learned, is you can just lose days, you can lose weeks and all of that. So things like that, if you do have a bit of time, just get it all set up to start with and then set up a bit of a structure.
That's really solid advice there. And with your job search, so you mentioned you were working with recruiters. I guess because you're, a seasoned marketing executive, so you're also probably applying for jobs that aren't necessarily being advertised and that people are hearing. So I guess networking is quite crucial for you. So how did you leverage your network during this period, and any advice to others on how to tap into their networks?
Yeah, like networks are it's hugely important. Like I don't think I've got a role without some form of networking in a
Mm,
regard. Like I think the best way like within most people's networks, there'd be people that they just feel comfortable to reach out straight away, regardless of if there's a role or opportunity. Like you can identify the companies you want to work for or just the people you want to work through again. So you can catch up with them, talk them through just the situation. Then I found other ones that I had worked with, but maybe like, still good business relationship, but aren't so close. But when I saw roles that had popped up either in that company or if there's mutual connections that I know that are in that company that I'm applying for, I would
mhm.
definitely do that before applying. I think the biggest thing is referrals into businesses are the most valuable thing. It's funny how quickly your application can be seen if you got someone just on the other side for you. So I did a lot of that. Even the recruiters, like before you apply, I knew the ones that I would probably put out to and go, hey, do you know anyone over at a certain company? And they'd come back. Strategically, sometimes it's just in their favor to put applicants forward. It can be a bit of a sales job on their end.
Mhm.
So got to be cautious of which ones you do in that regard. But yeah, it's all about just chatting to people, and particularly when there's not a lot out of there, you just sort of just keep up that sort of busy sort of coffee catch ups, all the things you can do to make sure you're seen. And once you're in the door, then that's all you need. There is a lot of applicants out there at the moment.
Oh gosh, it's disheartening if you look at
Mm.
LinkedIn when you can see how many applicants are
Yeah,
applying to each job in the first 24 hours, and it's like 350.
yeah,
It's
it's
very true.
crazy. I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is disheartening, and I think initially I was looking at what I've started to learn as well is that like obviously a lot of people are applying for roles that aren't necessarily in their field as well. So of
Yeah.
that is probably still a portion of people that are probably have the right experience to meet that role. So yeah, it is hard when you see the numbers, but I'd say just keep at it because it is if you are good in your field and you have good experience, and you will be seen.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Do you have any sort of specific skills or training that you did that? to enhance your employability during your job search? Did you do any sort of online courses or anything? Or not really.
Yeah, I didn't actually. It was I was only
Quite
out of
quick.
work for about 2.5 months, so it was quite quick,
Yes.
and I was
Yeah.
sort of speaking to people throughout. I think my detective skills improved through the time. So, like, I had a role that I won't say the company, but I applied for, and I hadn't heard anything for a couple of weeks, and then I fully
Hmm.
exhausted my network. Didn't know anyone over there, what I thought, and then 3 o'clock in the morning, my daughter was up one morning, and I said, I was like, oh, I'm just going to have a look again on this. And went onto their company website and actually saw an old colleague on their company video. So then, well, she's not on LinkedIn,
Ah,
so I ended up searching her down, and then she
yeah.
got me straight through to the HR. So there are little things like that. It's not a sort of structured skill or education, but the things
Yes.
you do. I think the advice is just to hustle, to be honest. Like, and you have to be sort of willing to do that and just put yourself out into situations. Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest part is just getting a little bit out of your comfort zone for that times.
Spot on. Great advice. I think
Mm.
you have to be thick-skinned and vulnerable
Yeah,
and put yourself out there, and you're not going to hear back from people. You might not get a response you want. You've got to just brush it off and yeah, hustle.
totally.
Hustle.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
can you share? You don't have to. How
Mm.
you found your new job? Was that
Actually, this is,
yeah?
yeah,
Yeah.
perfect example. So it's actually off the podcast.
Oh
So
no way!
yeah, funny enough.
That's
So
exciting.
just when I had the news, I got introduced to a recruiter,
Hmm.
AXR Recruitment, and they've got a big profile in our industry in consumer goods. A
Okay.
lot of big sort of FMCG companies. So they've been doing a podcast for some time, and they usually interview sales directors and CEOs of sort of all the large food corporations in Australia. And then they were starting a new podcast. So I caught up one of their recruiters during that week, and I sort of, as I said before, insisted to catch up sort of face to face. And at the end of it, she was just like, "Oh, um, like you're quite personable, and we would love to actually see if you'd be interested in actually joining our podcast to be the first guest of the future of sales and marketing." So I did that at the time when I was just finishing up the old role, and I knew the role was made redundant, so I just positioned it very strategically about myself, and it was a 25-minute sales job
Very
basically
clever.
around it all. So yeah, so then yeah, the new company that I'm going to work for, the sales director listened to it and was looking for a particular role in my function around sort of expanding into different markets. And then, yeah, that got my sort of foot in the door. Still had to do the full business case studies and sort of situational analysis and all the stuff that comes with it all. It just gets you the introduction, really. So yeah, that was sort of, as I said, getting myself out of the comfort zone and actually willing to actually do something a little bit different to be seen, I think. So that's probably my advice is do what you can, say yes to everything.
Well done. I love that
Mm.
story. That's really
Yeah.
cool. Is there anything that you've done during your time off that you've loved that isn't job search related that you would recommend to somebody who's out of work?
I I think the biggest thing is actually just time with Miller, with my 3-year-old. So she's only three once, so I've just been really present and making sure that I actually sort of applied the time where I can and really appreciated that time. So off the back of that, I structured my days to only do a couple of hours of sort of search a day,
Yeah.
but do it every day. I think that's probably my biggest advice rather than try to block out a couple of days, just keep on it every single day. That just suited me. And I would do gym in the morning, normal day, and then in the afternoons, I'd actually get to enjoy the day. So that was the part where I'd really sort of, if you can structure it that way, it's, there's only a certain amount you can do it every day around the search and then enjoy the time. So that was good. My wife's sort of particularly busy at work, so obviously just leaning a little bit more into sort of pickups and stuff like that and everything if I can. And just a little bit of just out of the routine a little bit has been nice. Like I haven't had a career break, I suppose you can call it, since I started sort of over 15 years ago. So it's kind of nice to just not have to have the routine. I'm sort of ready for it, like the full routine again. But I think I've sort of enjoyed that. So I know it can be hard for a lot of people, but I think if you got some structure in your days, and I think that goes a long way.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's hard when you don't have a job like you're so preoccupied with that, it's hard to enjoy your time off. And then you get a job and
Exactly.
you realize that you, yeah.
100%. Yeah.
um, and just last question for you. Reflecting on your experience, what is your best advice, do you think, for somebody who's currently going through a redundancy?
I think it's just keep moving in whatever you're doing. Like it doesn't have to be always related to the search. I think whenever anyone just gets a bit stagnant or stale, like that's where you just start to lose focus a little bit. So like if it does continue, like I have been lucky that it ends up sort of being quite timely, but if it did continue for a while, like, just do a couple of hours of work of something that's might not be related to your field or, something like that that just keeps you moving. So I think that's probably, yeah, the biggest advice. And then just sort of while you can do enjoy the good times. I know it is challenging, but and I think just continue to speak to people. I think the more you isolate yourself in anything is can be damaging. So I think the more you chat, the more productivity you sort of create around your day and your life, things will come, I think.
Yeah. You are so positive. I love it. And I'm so happy that, yeah, things worked out so well for you. Thank you so much for, sharing your journey and, your valuable insights with us. I think it's incredibly helpful for people who are in a similar situation to hear about this. So yeah, thank you for being so open.
No, I
So
appreciate it. No, it's great. No, it's yeah, it's commonplace at the moment. So it's the more
it is,
more
unfortunately.
people talking about it, I think the better. Like it used to be a real stigma around it, but I think the more people that are willing to chat and be open, I think it'll unfortunately continue. And I think everyone just has to face up to it sometimes.
Absolutely. We wish you the very best with your new role. Enjoy the time off before your new role starts. And yeah, thanks so much again, Pete, and all the best.
Awesome. All right, thanks, Leah. Appreciate
Take
it.
care.
See ya.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.